everybody, and welcome to the Backline with Rob and Adam. My name is Adam Michael Colley, alumnus of the Second Certificate Sag.
Whoa, cool. And my name is Rob Norman. I'm author of the cool improv book, Improvising Now, a Practical Guide to Modern Improv.
Robbie Norman, how are you doing?
Hey, it's Friday afternoon. I'm alive. I don't got a migraine. That's a pretty good situation to be in, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting to know someone so well that I know what the vibe is instantly. And there's like a way that people you love present themselves and you make that snap judgment. So I can tell it's a Friday, Robbie needs a nap, but Robbie's also excited to be here because we're going to chat prov, his favorite thing.
That's true. It's neck and neck between advanced long-form improvisation and ancient Mesopotamian mythology. Who knows who will win in the end? Who knows? Adam Colley, I recently saw a hilarious video of you trying to get in a fist fight with a Sith Lord. Can you please tell me what happened?
Look, it wouldn't be the first time. But yes, I went to Disneyland for the first time in my life. I'm a Disney World boy as a kid. Mm-hmm. I was lucky enough to have my mom take me a few times to Disney World when I was young. And as an adult, this was my first time in Disneyland in California. And they've got that huge new Star Wars area. And it is great. Like, it's just a lot of fun. Like, as soon as you walk in, you're like, oh, I'm actually here. Like the garbage cans, like you know those little ports that droids pop into, like R2 if they're trying to like do something. Like they're all over the place. And so as a kid, like if you see Mickey Mouse, Mickey just waves because like it's just this guy named Todd in the Mickey suit, and he's hugging everybody. But now they've got like recordings that are set up like through your hand movements and through little buttons that they have. So you're walking through like the Mos Eisley spaceport kind of place, and
that's like a sleazy sci-fi town.
Yeah, and it's like an old market. It kind of looks like a Moroccan market with like vendors and food, and you can buy blue milk. And all of a sudden I see these stormtroopers walk by, and I'm like, oh man. And like they're talking like stormtroopers because they have those little audio recordings. And then Kylo Ren walks by, and I'm like, this is super fun. So I'm with my wife, I'm with another couple. We're all, in our 30s just looking at this. There's a bunch of kids around. And so for me, I'm like, well, I'm going to get a picture of this. This is great. And I get a picture, but it's a live picture. So it's one of those pictures where like it shows a few seconds before and maybe a second after the picture is taken. And I've got this great shot of Kylo Ren like turning and pointing directly down the barrel of my camera, demanding that the stormtroopers go get me and bring me to him. And I had like, we do this all the time, I think in like comedy of like, what, me? Like pointing to ourselves. And I was like, oh, I was genuinely like surprised and excited. And because there was all these kids around, but they chose this man. So I go up and he's like, I've heard that you are a resistance fighter or something. And I'm like, no, sir. I don't believe in resistance fighters. And he's like, have you been harboring resistance fighters? And I'm like, no. And I turn to the crowd who's like, is this guy in on it? What's happening? And I'm like, no, we don't support any resistance fighters. Isn't that right, everyone? And everyone starts clapping. And so then Kylo Ren starts like yelling at his stormtroopers. And then Kylo Ren is like something to the effect of like, well, I'll find out. And then starts like force mind searching me. And is like, I wish I remembered the line he said, but it was something like about like fate. And if it was like my choice. And he's like, but I know now. And I was like, whoa. And he's like, get out of here. And I walked away, and it was so exciting.
The video is incredible because a big part of improv is bringing audience members up on stage. So when you're at Second City in the touring company, you have to rehearse these games, and it's quite frequent that you would be pulled up to play pillars for other improvisers, and you try and do your best approximation of what you think an audience member, how they would behave, because there's so much panic, they might freak out and say something weird. And so there's this kind of like standard operating mode when you, an improviser, are called into audience interaction. I could tell how into this Star Wars world you were in because I did not see an improviser in control of a role play. You were like you had never done improv in your life before. Like you were so into it, you're so shocked. Like it was incredible to watch. A very beautiful thing to see the inner child of Adam Colley get to interact with Kylo Ren.
Well, it's like, I don't know if you've had to experience this, but sometimes, we watch a ton of improv, right? Anywhere we go. And sometimes the improvisers don't know who we are, so they might think of us as regular audience members and bring us up. And it's a rough experience for improvisers to be brought up into another improv show, because for me, it's like, oh God, I want to be a normal person for you. Like, I don't want to yes and you too well. I don't want to be too confident because I want you to do your bit and me to just be a normal audience member. So it's a tense situation. So this for me was like, I had decisions to make. I was like, do I play into the world of like, I'm a citizen here, or do I actually be a good improviser and yes and whatever he says? And I was like, this is a good lesson. Sometimes saying no is a yes.
Saying yes.
There you go.
And for you were the other rule, the other improv rule that you kind of showed us, which is when there's a kind of imperialist overlord in front of you, instantly become a bootlicker. Disavow freedom, liberty, throw everyone under the bus so that you don't get in trouble.
No, I protected everyone. I didn't say they. Yeah, that woman, that pregnant woman, she's a resistance fighter. I said, no, none of us. We are all in this together. And I said, Kylo, you need to leave or I will, take care of biz.
Wow.
Yeah. That part wasn't caught on tape.
So it's 2 minutes of you being like a bootlicker.
Yep.
A fascist bootlicker, and then you resist after the tape ends.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an old Jedi trick, but whatever.
It's so funny too that you spend like $400 to get into a park so you can meet your favorite fascist who tells you he's going to murder you, and you get to pretend.
Oh, like the shops sold like you know what as a kid when you're like out for Halloween and they have a picture on like your chest of what you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you're going out as the Hulk, you have a Hulk mask. This is in like the 80s. So you have a Hulk mask, but then like on the vest that they give you, it's a picture of the Hulk. So the costume was more about telling everybody that you're a Hulk fan rather than actually looking like the Hulk.
Right.
So many of the gift shops were selling like cloaks, like Jedi, like Tatooine cloaks, but it didn't like say Star Wars or Jedi on it. It's just a cloak. And so I got to like try on a bunch of that, and it's like, that's what you pay for when you go to Disney. It's like you're actually tapping into this magical childlike whimsy. And then the rides were so intense. The rides were so good. Like pulling that lever on the Millennium Falcon to go into hyperspace on like a simulator ride was so fun. Shooting, it was great. So anyway, that's what's up with me. I had a fantastic time. Really lived some childhood dreams.
That's awesome.
And you don't have a migraine, which is great.
And I don't have a migraine. That's my update.
Well, Rob, let me take care of biz for you, because I got something I want to chat to you about, and I want to get your opinion. And when, Rob, you're all surly and lazy, this is where opinions are at its peak. So let me rock this. Tell me what you think. So recently, there's a local improv company. They put on an improv show. Not just a show, a jam. Okay? But they charged $5 for admission if you wanted to play or if you wanted to watch. Then there was a slight critique of this idea. that argued if you're teaching improv classes, you should probably give those students a place to play for free. So this is what has been going on. So the question, breaking it down, is, Rob, should improv jams be free?
I think it's a good question.
Thank you. I'll see you later.
Okay, see ya. Peace.
Bye.
Peace. I think you could make arguments for both sides of this, but I think before we kind of figure out an answer, I think I have to kind of go deeper with this idea, which is even if you don't charge for an improv jam, is it still free?
I thought you were going to say, is it still a jam? And I was like, are we? Okay, hold on.
Just into the definition of words. But I think COVID and a baby has made me really think a lot more about the shows I do and the costs of these shows on us. So if I put on a free improv jam, how are you going to get there, AC? You going to drive? Who pays for the gas? Who pays for the parking? You're going to take the subway? Who pays for that? Your Presto Pass? Who pays for your childcare? Who's babysitting while you're off doing this free jam? Who pays for the shift that you missed at work so you could make sure that you were at that jam and work your way up this system? When we're talking about free parts of improv, I think we can often confuse that just because we aren't charging for it, that there are no costs involved to the art form that we do. And I think it relates quite closely to who improv was originally designed for.
Okay.
Because it wasn't designed for people in the community looking for free things to do. That's for sure.
Like, yeah. So then let's break that down. Who was improv initially designed for? Because just like you think of something like the right to bear arms, it's like, well, that's what we're going for. It's like, well, that was designed in a very different time for very different people for very different reasons and did not take into account the way things will develop. So let's just go back. Who was improv initially designed for?
So if we're thinking about the origins of improv, I would think that the two main things that you would see for most of those folks at Compass or Second City would be a certain form of privilege and then also a kind of over-education. Because we know that at Compass, this was a playwrights group out of Northwestern University in Chicago. But the people who were involved in this were people like David Shepard, who was very concerned about the proletariat, but he himself was the son of a very wealthy New York architect. He had connections to Vanderbilt wealth. He went to Harvard and Northwestern, so he had 2 degrees. If you think about Bernie Sahlins, who helped fund the Second City, when he was, I guess, in his 20s, 30s, he sold shares in an audio tape, like a audio recording company that he had that made cassette tapes, to fund the Second City. So the idea that you just have shares in a cassette tape company, a cassette factory that you can just sell is an incredible privilege. Even people like Elaine May, who I love, I think is so cool. I mean, she had a baby when she was in high school, and she was able to have her mom take care of the baby in California while she was out in Chicago working on her improv craft, working on her make-believe. And so even that, there's an incredible kind of privilege there that you have a mother who's able to take care of your child, support the child and you while you're in Chicago so you can go do make-em-ups. And I think the final example I would just give would be on the first day of rehearsal. There's this guy, and he's not, you may not know him if you haven't read a lot of these Second City
rehearsal
history
for
books.
What, the first, like the
first Second City show.
Okay.
So the Second City, like I think it's like the first show, the first day of rehearsal where they're working on this sketch review that they're going to do. Severn Darden, who is like a Southern gentleman, arrives in a Rolls Royce that his parents bought for him, wearing a cape. That's all I have to say. Severn Darden wore a cape and showed up to the first Second City rehearsal in a Rolls Royce. After he finished Second City, he went to the West Coast in California, and he just did acid and followed around the electric Kool-Aid acid test folks, Ken Kesey and all those guys. And so who paid for that? Well, obviously his parents did. His parents paid for him to do acid when he wasn't doing improv. Built into the DNA of improv is a kind of over-education and also a kind of financial freedom to be able to do all of these things.
Now, I wouldn't say you or I had Rolls Royces, but we definitely had stability. We definitely were able to do a lot of the things that other people weren't able to do, right? I wouldn't say overeducated, but we had the opportunity to go to post-secondary school. We had the opportunity to have supportive parents, right? Not just financially, but emotionally. And again, we're not Cape boys, but we're definitely okay. And I'm sure a lot of us, what?
A cake boy? I'm so sorry.
Cape.
What's a cake? Oh, Cape boy. Okay, yes.
We're
Cape
not
boys,
Rolls
yes.
Royce and capes. We're more subways and backpacks, but still, that's more privilege than a lot of people have. And I'm sure we all know the Rolls Royce people in our community, and love them or hate them, they're there. But taking all this into consideration, what do you think that tells us about the state, like where it started? What does that tell us about the state of improv now?
I think you kind of dragged us into this, and I think we're good examples
Excuse me?
of. Yeah, you dragged us into it. So now you're going to get read. I'm going to give you a reading.
The library is
What's it
open.
called? Okay. But yeah, I mean, like when we think about economic class, like you're the son of a principal, and your mother is a important businesswoman. I don't know what she does, but I know she does some kind
She's an
of
occupational
business thing.
therapist.
Well, she seems very business oriented. She seems very professional, regardless. But your story, much like I think every other improviser's story, is if you're an improviser right now, it is very, very likely that you're making less money than your parents did. That's interesting. So you and I are able to kind of downgrade our wealth or our class level because for us, that step down isn't an actual threat. I remember having no money, flipping hamburgers, sleeping in an unfinished basement where I would wake up and centipedes would be crawling on my face. And I would be doing improv as much as I possibly could. But never in my head was I like, I'm poor right now. I'm below the poverty line. I better do something to get me out of the situation. I was always just like, if I want to be out of the situation, I just will be. I'll borrow money from my mom. I'll go back to university. I'll become a teacher or I'll become a lawyer or whatever. And so there is a kind of privilege that for us within our improv community, when we're talking about money and getting paid and the future, having a future within this, the idea that we have this kind of safety net allows you and I as improvisers to take bigger risks because we're not sincerely worried about our future. We know there's a way out for us. So we can hang around for 10 years working on long form, getting really, really good at something very specific within our art form that maybe other people who go, oh, I'm living in a basement. My rent is $300. If things go wrong, my parents can't help me out because they're struggling and I can't go to university because I can't afford it. So I'm stuck. I'm going to live in a basement forever. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is probably not pay $800 for an improv class. The first thing I'm going to do is probably try and find a better job.
And I mean, it's a little bizarre to think about, but when we were starting, it was 20 years ago, right? The cost of living, you think about what rent was for you, $300. That's quadrupled at least for people in Toronto. The idea of going out for drinks after, where you get like a $3 drink at the bar, well, you're not getting that anymore. Like all of the social stuff surrounding not just the classes, but the idea of again, I'm trying to think of a Metro Pass, which was our monthly subway pass when I started using them, was $89 for the month. And I think the last time I bought one, it was something like $149. It's like, that's a month. That's doubled, right? It's just all of these little things that are not only where you come from, but just when you're getting into this art form.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about the social piece. The idea that you're going, oh, well, you get it's a free jam. oh, it's a free improv workshop, free class. We're giving away that for free. But a lot of conversations, a lot of relationships are built outside of the classroom at the bar. And if you can't afford to be in that space, then you're at a disadvantage.
So we're talking a little bit about the advantages, the disadvantages of where people and how people get into improv. Where improv started with, very wealthy, very educated people. We got Rolls Royces, we got capes, which I don't think cost that much, but I think you can only rock if you make a certain amount of money. But as many of the companies that we work for, that we know about, they're really trying, or at least talking about trying to broaden their base, right? Talking about inclusion, reaching out to different communities. But I think something that is missing in these conversations, at least for now, is the unique challenges that come with trying to include different groups of people. Instead of thinking, well, let's just bring them. They are all come from the same place that we do. We're not talking about that. So what are some of those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some challenges, and there's something about the culture of our improv communities that make it probably difficult for certain people to access it. I mean, coming back to this idea of privilege and coming back to this idea of education, I would say most improvisers within our community finished high school. I think most improvisers in our community probably have a university degree. Some might have a master's. We are an incredibly overeducated generation. There are very complicated conversations happening on and off stage about all sorts of big ideological premises kind of floating in the ether in improv theaters and in classrooms. I've noticed this a lot when we're talking about writing classes. This has become a big part of what we're doing, which is like making sure that everybody is taken care of. Are we on the right side of a political issue? Are we punching up? Are we punching down? Are we punching to the side? Like, these are huge conversations that we're kind of having, and I think they're really valuable. But not everybody is going to be in a place where those conversations are happening. There are going to be certain communities that may not know the right words to say. Maybe in their community, they have different values or they use different words. And so we kind of exist in this space where the culture of improv, we want to be as inclusive as possible. But when we talk about people who maybe have different backgrounds, maybe they don't know the right words to use. And I've kind of experienced this as a teacher, where there'll be someone who is very benevolent, very, very kind, and they'll do a scene or they'll write a sketch and they'll just get it wrong. Like, very, very bad, very wrong. And I've been instructed as a teacher that I have to unpack this for people who are in the room. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable or unsafe. The next week, there's a good chance that person isn't coming back. Or if that person comes back and they do it again, it's a kind of grindstone for those folks. Because not only are they learning improv, they're learning vocabulary. They're learning ideas. That can be a kind of uphill battle. The other piece that we might think about when we're reaching out to these other communities that might require something like a free improv jam or a free class, for folks who don't have intergenerational wealth, folks who are newly immigrated to this country, we know that folks who are newly immigrated to this country, I heard this fact, that if you're new to Canada, it is more likely that you will be conservative than if you were born here. And I thought that was mind-blowing. So you're more likely to be religious, you're more likely to have conservative family values, more conservative beliefs around abortion. So as we kind of broaden our scope, we don't really have an infrastructure to deal with people who have wildly different political or religious viewpoints from the majority of us, the majority of the very educated left that exists within our improv community. We have no way to unpack these discussions or have these discussions in a kind of safe way for everyone. So although we might offer something as a free class, there's some cultural barriers as well here too that we haven't really addressed at all within our community.
Yeah, it's really interesting because in addition to what you were saying, I was thinking about some of the conversations we've had with international students on Zoom classes. Because they've grown up in a country or a society where they just view things differently, right? Not right or wrong, just, oh, we grew up and this is our history, which has led to the way we treat certain individuals or the way we view our government. And then they are being told, well, we don't do that here, or you need to make these adjustments to fit in here. And we don't have time or the resources to have those lengthy discussions to really get everybody's input, to talk about how as a class can we all come together and figure out a way that everyone feels safe, that everyone feels comfortable. So we just kind of have to address it quite quickly and move on. Nothing really gets completed. It just gets pushed to the side so we can continue. So what are some things that like the larger companies can do, the ones with the resources that might be able to offer a trickle down effect to the people who are teaching these classes or involved in the communities on the ground?
AC, I'm going to float something past you, and
Oh,
I haven't talked to anyone, so you can tell me how bad or good this is.
Okay.
But I wonder if some of our problems about, improv jobs, because this is what ultimately we're talking about, like improv jobs. People come into this in a professional way, and they want a place to practice. They deserve a place where they're not being charged to practice their craft if they don't have the money. That's the criticism of the pay-to-play model. But one of the issues I think with our improv community is there's two main groups of people. There are people who want to do this for a living, and then there are people who just kind of want to do it recreationally. And we've merged those two communities together. It's kind of a mess. Because for people who are doing this as a kind of rec league, paying $5 to do an improv jam makes complete sense. Someone's got to pay for the theater. Someone's got to sustain it. That's completely fine. For people who are trying to do this for a profession and money is an obstacle, well, that seems very unfair and unjust. I wonder what would happen if an improv community created a kind of rec league, a not-for-profit amateur organization similar to like when you play house league volleyball as an adult, where it's a volleyball club where people get together and they can play volleyball with each other. And there's no pressure to become a professional volleyball player. You're just doing something to hang out with someone each week. I think that would satisfy a big chunk of our community, and it would make clearer what kind of shows that we're doing. Because these professional shows, it's unclear if I'm playing in a rec league. Is this jam just a place for people to kind of hang out and have fun? Or is this actually a kind of skill building as we're creating young professionals that we hope to put into professional level shows? I also feel like if it was clear that these were professional level shows, the relationship between producers and performers might be a little bit more clear. But this is a professional level show. You are going to get paid for it. Like, there are comedy shows right now where I'm booked as a headliner, and the end of the show, the producer is slipping me money. But I know the other acts aren't getting paid. So what's going on there? Like, I don't feel great about that situation. I definitely want to be paid $20. I think that's a nice thing to do when you're playing these kind of more loose shows. But also it makes me feel kind of uncomfortable that the rec league part of the show isn't being paid.
I mean, this is a conversation that I feel like is its own episode, but I agree. Like the rec league idea, right? We talked about this on the live Dallas episode of creating tiers of shows, right? Like a stand-up community of, oh, this is an open mic versus this is a headlining set. Because built into improv is this like complicated, almost hypocrisy of, we want to have a high level show, but also you have to accept and you've got to welcome everyone. And it's like, well, then why can't I be on Middleditch and Schwartz? Right? They have a Netflix show. Well, I'm an improviser. You should welcome me. I don't know them and I've never talked to them. I'm sure they're very nice. But the idea of like having, as you said, these communities combined, it creates a lot of unnecessary issues between producers, audiences, cast members, right? If you're doing a show with someone who is brand new, but as an improviser, you should be welcoming them into the show, all this kind of stuff. So anyway, that's a whole other idea, but I think it's very interesting. I love playing sports. There's no way I'm good. I like hockey, I like soccer, and I'll play those in a rec league, and I have no expectations, and the only thing I come away with is that was fun. And everybody else was like, that was fun.
Yeah, and I feel like it would certainly help us manage our expectations of what's happening in these shows or what's happening in these rehearsals. I think one other thing I might add to this, and this seems like a strange request, but it seems to me that there's something off. If I was improv dictator, I would make a fiat that every theater has to take down every quote of a famous person and take down all the pictures of all the famous people. It seems a little bit off to me, because what we're doing is creating a kind of rec situation, a pay-to-play situation. We're connecting it with this professional vein, and then at the end of it, we have pictures of famous people that we are subconsciously telling you constantly, stick with us, you will be there. And, you know, if you're in Canada and you're like, stick with us, you will be there. There are not a lot of faces on that wall.
That person's in the
from
audience.
the last 20 years.
That person's there.
If the rule was, if they currently perform there, you can have their face on the wall, I would be completely okay with it. But the idea that, you know, you're walking into a building and being like, these people were on our stage 75 years ago, and you're like, okay, but they're not here now. It creates unrealistic expectations that this is a viable industry for someone, that you can make money. It sets up weird expectations. And I understand the value of connecting your brand with people that you've trained or people who have been on your stages. However, I just don't think it's doing any favors to new people showing up. If new people showed up and went, oh, this is just a room, I'm just learning improv, that seems to me to be a bit fairer.
Yeah, you're right. I think about right before the pandemic, I was playing in a floor hockey rec league, and the idea of walking in there and seeing pictures of famous athletes and knowing that people on my team are aspiring to be those athletes. They're using the same space I'm using to have fun, and they're using it to climb the ladder. That's not going to create a good experience for either of us, because you're not going to tolerate my inept hockey ability, and I'm going to be frustrated with how serious you take this. And it's like, if we could just create the option at least, and then you as the individual can decide, well, I know the expectations of both. I know as an individual what I enjoy, how much I want to put into this, and then I can make my choice.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that you walk into this high school gym, there's a giant picture of Austin Matthews being like, I played hockey here. Say yes and. Then at the end of the house league, you got to try out for the Leafs. That is what our current improv situation is. House league, big picture, and then you can try out for the Leafs. Something feels wrong about that.
Something feels wrong. I do.
And also in the. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just gonna. I do love the idea of taking down all the pictures and just being like, this is a space for improv. This is not a celebrity museum.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wonder what that would do subconsciously to people. Because I think as an audience, you walk in and you see those and you're like, holy shit, I'm going to see the best thing I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
If these celebrities are from here, then that means this theater is going to give me the best entertainment I've had. And then the expectation for these group of people who might be a year in, unrealistic and unfair. But if you show up to a black box theater and it's just like, come see an art show where people are going to be using your suggestions to create comedy on the spot. Be like, ooh, this seems cool. I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, also, when we think about the ethics of teaching people, coming back to this house league analogy, imagine in your rec league. Also, in addition to the rec league, we had classes. So we had slap shot classes, and we had goalie classes, and we had stick handling classes. And you tried out for the Leafs and you didn't get into the Leafs, but maybe if you take a couple more classes, you'll do better when the big tryout happens. Again, there's some stuff going on here that doesn't quite feel like it's connecting for me. It feels like the model is a little bit off. And ultimately, for 90% of the community, I don't think it really matters. I think there's a lot of people who have a lot of disposable income, so this system works just fine for them. It's not a problem. But I feel like for other people, for the people that hopefully we're trying to involve within the community, this must be a very confusing, overwhelming, and ultimately debilitating situation.
Yep. I mean, you explain what the benefits are of taking an improv class, what the trajectory is, and then you finally agree, fine. If based on all of that, I'm in. And then you show up and it's nothing like that. That would be a big bummer. So we've talked about kind of like what can the companies maybe do on a big scale, but you and I can't walk into Second City and say, get your shit together.
I plan to on Monday.
Well, we could. No, everyone is going to say no. But what can individuals do on a smaller scale?
Yeah, I think there are things that you could do probably right now to help fix this problem. And my plan may seem counterintuitive.
Uh-oh.
The first thing I would say, can you please go get together the best people that you know, and can you put on a very good improv show with a very good premise? Can you charge $40, $50 a ticket? If you can do that, you're helping out improv across the world more than any initiative that we could possibly do. So that's step one. Make a show that's a hit that we can monetize. Be a good capitalist for me. That's step one. Step two, can you take that show, can you take that format, and can you offer it online or offer it to the world for free? Give me everything you got. Tell me how the show works. Give me the poster. Agree to do a free Zoom session. Let me have a franchise of that show. So we monetize improv, we create real income, and then we give it to people in other communities who can also make income from improv. One of our big issues about the economic model right now, and forgive me, Adam, I'm going to reference Magic the Gathering.
You
Is that
brought
okay?
up Austin Matthews, so you give a little, you get a little.
There's this term in collectible card games called whales. The whales. And basically what it means is people who have disposable income, extra income, who are willing to pay more for a premium product. So in this game of Magic the Gathering, you could buy a pack of cards, that's 15 cards, for $5, and it has all the game pieces that you need to play the game. You can also go and spend $30 for 15 cards that have fancy art, and it has foils, shiny cards, special art, borderless cards. Those are called collector packs. They are the same game pieces. Maybe the collector pack, you get some extra value in there, some better cards. But for the most part, they're the same game pieces. What Hasbro is doing right now is going, our market, we're not growing new people, but the people who are already invested in this community, how do we extract more wealth from them? How do we give them better things that everybody already has access to? Sometimes when I'm looking at the new classes that are being offered or the kind of festival experiences that are being offered to the improv community, it also seems to be kind of pursuing these kinds of whales. People who have a lot of extra money, who are pursuing experiences as if they were collectible cards. So, I got to travel to this fancy festival, study with this fancy person. I'm going to put that on my resume. Look what I can do. And maybe they go to all the festivals and they collect all of these experiences. When we market towards those whales, when we're trying to extract more wealth from our community, we're not doing the actual work, which is creating products that outside of the community is bringing income in. Because right now we have a weird pyramid system where we have students here and then teachers here at the top. The students come in, you don't know improv, I'll teach you improv. You each pay $400 and I get a sliver of that and the rest goes to the theater. That's fine. But what we really want to do, if we want to have a healthy community, we want to create shows that normal people see, that normal people interact with. Corporate workshops that anyone can do. I would love it if someone who has a corporate business went, cool, who wants my lesson plans? Who wants my debrief? The charge is $0. Just go do corporate in your town. Please don't do corporate in my town, but you can use this in your town. That would help out our community a heck of a lot. It would create meaningful jobs for people, jobs that currently don't exist.
Cool. Well, Rob, wrapping it up, improv jams, free?
I think rec league improv jams could be free or not free. It doesn't matter. It depends on what that not-for-profit can afford. And I don't think professional shows should be jams. I mean, if you're going to do a professional level show that is a improv jam, then that should not be free, and you should be reimbursed somehow for your time. But I think because the nature of improv jams, where anyone can show up and play, you're not going to pay anyone who shows up to play. So, no, there's no way to make them free. They're always going to cost you money.
Fair enough. I want to hear from you, though. Not you, Rob. You listening.
Oh, wow.
What do you think? Should improv jams be free? How does it work in your town? What do you think about the system? Is it working for you right now? Do we want to create this rec league idea, separate things for better experiences for everyone involved? I don't know. Let us know. You can always reach out to us at The Backline on Facebook and Twitter, or at The Backline Podcast on Instagram, where I post super fun shots of me and Rob traveling around the world, looking at each other and eating charcuterie. Rob, on stage, off stage, is there anything exciting, interesting going on in your life?
You know, over the pandemic, the one cool thing has been the hardest thing for me, because I'm just so exhausted with stuff. But one thing I didn't tell you, I don't know if you know I do this. Do you know that I'm part of a comic book club?
Yes, I do know that.
So each week we find 3 issues of a comic book, and we discuss it. And I've always loved graphic novels. I'm a big fan of art, obviously, and art with stories is even better. But I've found myself to be refine my taste quite a bit. There's one book that I can't stop thinking about. It is called, I want to get this right, I'm just going to look it up here. It is called, yeah, here it is, Shadow Life by Hiromi Gato. It is a story from a Baltimore artist, but a Canadian writer. And it is one of the most different stories I've ever read. The story structure is so different, so unique. It is such a breath of fresh air in a world full of big Marvel movies. It's a story about a little old lady, I think in Toronto, maybe Vancouver, I don't remember. But she's just kind of going about her life and waiting to die. And other things happen, but I won't wreck it for you. But Shadow Life is probably one of the best books I have read this year, maybe ever.
What a unique way to describe a book. It sounds like a very sad Seinfeld. It's like, it's about nothing, except just eventually you'll die.
No, it's about things, but if I tell you the plot points, if I sell it to you, I will wreck the great experience that I had while reading it.
Gotcha.
But it's about an older woman, and you know, stories about older women, often you can find them maybe as a young person boring, hard to engage with. You don't give a shit about them because you're like, I'm not old. Why do I care about your issues? But this story is so relatable and so touching, and the main character is so funny and charming that it makes the whole experience just worth it. I would love to know if you're 20 years old and you're reading Shadow Life, if you have the same experience. But as someone who is in their early 30s, I had an incredible time.
So you read it 20 years ago? That's amazing. You know what? For me, I actually sent you a picture of this, but you and I, whenever we're on tour, just thinking about the pandemic, like, touring is lovely. We have a great time, but it can be exhausting, especially this last tour where we came back to LA from Dallas and realized that all of our loved ones had COVID in LA, and Rob and I had to get a hotel for a few days, and it was tiring, and we were a lot. But The thing that always recharges us is going to an art gallery. And we went in Dallas, and then just last week went to the Mocha in LA, and both free, right? They don't take very long, but for me, especially during the pandemic when things feel, I don't know, just draining, it always feels like a nice recharge. And going there took, an hour and a half to walk around, free. It's very quiet, it's cold, and it's just lovely. And for someone, I go with Rob. Rob is very good at helping me understand why certain things are important. But there's so many things where I'm just like, very instantly, either I care about this or I don't. And when you do, it's just lovely to just sit there, enjoy it, have a think. And so just a reminder to check out what's free in your city, because there's so many things that are free, especially during the summer when it's very hot and you're looking for something to do that is semi-safe. Check out a contemporary art gallery. It's usually free, takes 2 hours, and it just gives you a nice little mental boost that you might not have had.
And if you're feeling intimidated about going into an art gallery and you're like, I don't know what these paintings mean, just drop me a line. Drop at the Backline Pod. Tell me what gallery you're going to, and I will give you a hot tip about one painting, and hopefully you'll have a nice time.
And you can do
that
what
is
we
an
did.
offer.
Spend an hour in Dallas looking for one statue, finding it, and then saying, all right, well, see you later.
Well, that was a very beautiful sculpture of Gilgamesh himself, holding two beasts.
I feel like we were looking for like an 8-foot statue, and it turns out to be about 12 inches.
I mean, coppersmithing is quite difficult, and I mean, this was a great rendering of the king of Uruk himself, friend of Enkidu. So, when you're looking for a statue that's 3,000 years old, I mean, how big do you want it to be, AC?
You inky do or you inky don't. This
I hate it.
podcast is
I hate
brought
it.
to you.